going to hand over the controls to Melanie, and you should be able to hear her voice. Okay, so hope everybody's in listen mode, and if you do have any questions, please type them into the chat box, and we'll be able to answer those at the end. So we are about to start now. So in a few seconds, you'll be able to hear Melanie's voice. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. The best laid plans. Julie and I had a great practice this morning. Everything was working fine. And now this is going to be great because we're going to have two of us doing this, because Julie's going to drive my slides for me whilst I actually do the voiceover. So if you hear me saying, next please, Julie, you'll know why. So can we have the next please, Julie? So why is doing good for business? If you look at the picture on here, there are two coffee shops, and I want us just to suspend reality for a minute and think that these two coffee shops are actually next door to each other, and they both serve great coffee. So the question would be, why would you choose one over the other? The one on the right, Starbucks, probably most of you recognize, and the one on the left, most of you probably don't, because that's a local family concern that's been going since 1817, so passed down through the generations and still in the same family. And here's the interesting thing. You may have a number of reasons why you would choose one over the other, but typically people tell me that they would choose the small local coffee shop. And yet, Starbucks itself has 81% of their coffee is independently verified to make sure that it meets social responsibility criteria. They're actually the largest buyer of fair trade coffee in the world. They have an ethical sourcing policy. But the reason why lots of people are saying these days I wouldn't go to Starbucks is because of the issue around their tax. So despite it not being illegal, lots of people are now saying I prefer to go somewhere else. But the interesting thing here is only a few years ago, any news of their tax situation would have only been buried somewhere in the business pages, and the majority of us wouldn't actually have seen it. And yet these days, it's actually mainstream headline news. So, Julie, if you can press the button for me, please. There's a really interesting survey that was done by the Chartered Institute of Marketing recently, and they interviewed a large number of executives from diverse organizations. And interestingly, 85% of those executives said that competing on price, product, and quality was no longer enough. And if we press the key again, and 75% felt that sustainability will drive buying decisions from their customers moving forward. And if we press it again, and a whopping 95% said that customer experience is the new battleground. And this is where it gets really interesting for both social entrepreneurs and socially responsible businesses, because there are actually, and if Julie, if you press it again for me, there are actually 119 factors that Cranfield University has identified make up customer experience. And it is literally that holistic experience that people are looking at and thinking about when they're buying products these days and services. So it kind of goes to explain why the public are feeling the same way as executives and why people might choose the 1817 coffee shop rather than Starbucks. So if we can have the next slide. But the question then, for those of us who think about the finances, is why would we, as entrepreneurs, bother? And the answer is a number of things. First one, if you can press it for me, please, Julie. And that's, again, recent surveys have demonstrated that customers are 88% more likely to buy from an organization that they see as doing good, whatever that good is, than they are from a similar organization offering similar products at a similar quality and a similar price. So, you know, it's a pretty big figure, 88% more likely to buy. And here's another interesting one. If we actually press it again, Julie, for me, please. And that's a name that you'll probably all recognize, John Lewis. In a really, really bad retail year of 2013, when lots of retailers and ones that we know and recognize were going to the wall, John Lewis's profits actually went up. And they were able to pay a 17% staff bonus, which I think we'd all agree was pretty much unprecedented. And it's interesting with their model where their staff are so integrated into the way in which the store is run and feel that they truly, truly own the company. But here's another interesting one. Why might it matter to your investors? If we press the button again, Julie? I think most of you will know Ocado, and the interesting thing here is that John Lewis was an investor in Ocado. So we have Ocado here, and when John Lewis Pension Fund removed its actual investment from there, which was for reasons that had nothing to do with Ocado itself, the overnight drop in their share price was 10.4% when that investment decision was announced to the market. So nothing else had changed. It's exactly the same organisation, Ocado, offering exactly the same services and products in exactly the same way, and yet investors saw that as a sign that if somebody as ethical as John Lewis had withdrawn, that they were going to withdraw as well. And if we press it again, people, this is an interesting one. 78% of people surveyed said that they would choose to stay with a company that they considered to be more ethical, that did more good in their local community, than they would move to another one for a pay rise. And that's really, really interesting. And also 50% of those surveyed said that if they didn't think that you were a company that did good, then they wouldn't work for you at all. And I think that's quite a striking figure. And I know with everything else that's going on at the moment, you know, sometimes you think people are making compromise, and that's true. But also the interesting thing here was that the figures rose the younger the person actually was. So our young people very, very much are choosing ethics over pay and are very much making decisions on who they will and won't work for based on the ethics that they see within that organisation. So if Julie can put a finger on the button again for me, why else might we do this? And those of us who've been fortunate enough to stay in hotels, or unfortunate for those of us travelling on business sometimes, we know that these days that we always see things in hotels that say, you know, please don't put your bath towel back on the hanger if you don't want us to wash it. And of course that does save the planet, but it also saves money for the organisation involved. And then on something completely different, interestingly, fair trade sales grew 19% in the UK last year. So actually bucked the trend, and some of them have gone up much higher. For example, sugar, fair trade sugar, have gone up by 35%. So people, consumers, are making decisions based on what they see are the added value in terms of doing good on the products that they're buying. And interestingly, 80% of people say that it's important to them that companies help to contribute to reducing poverty and to community development. So 80% of people think that you need to do it. And one that's probably quite topical, if you press the button again for me, Julie, please. How important is your reputation? And we've had some horrendously to light through recent disasters. But this is really interesting. The organisations that in the recent disasters said, I will pay compensation now because people clearly need it, and I don't need the proof that they were actually working in my part of the factory, are the ones that have actually done very, that have been seen to have stepped up to the mark, compared to some bigger brand names where they're actually sitting there saying, I need you to prove that your relative was actually working for me on that day in my part of the factory. So, reputation is one thing that I think that nobody can get back. So it really, really matters as well on your reputation. And if that wasn't enough, if we press the button again, these days, anybody who's looking to tender for a public sector contract will probably have heard of the Social Value Act, which came into force. And this just means that commissioners need to take into account the economic, the social, and the environmental impact of their tendering. So not only in terms of what they're buying, but in terms of how they buy it. So what they need to look at is how could they deliver some more social value through the tendering process and the contracts that they let. And that's why we're seeing questions now that ask about what your economic, social, and environmental impact is. So lots of really, really good reasons why you might want to actually think about how you can connect your financial value to your social value, whether you're a social enterprise or a commercial enterprise.
Melanie, can I just interrupt 1 second, Melanie? What's the heading of the slide that we're on? Because I think we've got a bit out of sync with the slide, so I just want to make sure that we're on the right slide, matching up to what you're saying. What's the heading on?
The one that I had was show me yet more money.
Okay, just let me see if I can scroll through and find that.
Oh, have we lost it?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just going to show me.
Okay, so if you want to press it again, then your next one should say, surely this is only for social enterprises. My apologies, everybody. I had some lovely animation on my slides, which works very well when I press the button, but is far more difficult for Julie to keep up with. So I've now got a slide that says, surely this is only for social enterprises. And this is a question I'm asked time and time again. Surely connecting what you do in terms of the good to the financial parts of your organisation are only for social enterprises. And I would say not. So, Julie, if you press the button, I should have an explanation of a social entrepreneur. And this, funnily enough, is the unlimited one. So people who have vision, drive, commitment, and passion who want to change the world for the better. And that's a social entrepreneur. If we then think about what a social enterprise is, so if Julie presses the button again, a business that's primarily social objectives whose surpluses are principally reinvested for that purpose, that's the Department of Trade and Industry. But here's the interesting one for anyone on the line who's not a social enterprise or a social entrepreneur, if Julie presses the button for me again, and that's the definition of a socially responsible business. So one that behaves ethically and contributes to economic development while improving the quality of life for their workforce and families, as well as the local community and society at large. And I think that probably applies, or most small businesses would like to think that that applies to them. So everything that I'm talking about here is both the social enterprises and the commercial enterprises. But if Julie presses the button again, I'd ask another question. Not everybody sets out to be either a commercial or social entrepreneur in the beginning. So if we press the button, here was the original definition, people who've got vision, drive, commitment, and passion. And if we press it again, we should have a picture of Richard Branson and Jamie Oliver. And here are two people that I think we would all agree were very, very successful entrepreneurs who certainly have vision, and they certainly have drive, they certainly have commitment, and they certainly have passion. But if we press it again, are they purely commercial entrepreneurs, or can we be both? So people with vision, drive, commitment, and passion, if Julie presses the button, and then she presses it again, we'll have a picture of Jamie Oliver. Jamie is not only a commercial entrepreneur, but he's a campaigner. And he does an awful lot of work outside of his commercial enterprises to actually help to introduce healthier eating, to help people to cook. He takes on the establishment, so people like schools, the school dinners, and so on. And he's very, very well known for it. And, of course, his famous restaurant 15, which is the restaurant where he works with young people who come from difficult backgrounds with a view to looking at how can he help them with their training and actually then help them to go on to be chefs. Now, he's somebody who's both a commercial entrepreneur and does a lot of good. And I'm sure if we talked to him, he probably would not describe himself automatically as a social entrepreneur. And if we press the button again, we'll have a picture of Richard Branson now. And Richard, again, has, vision, drive, commitment, and passion, undoubtedly. But again, he's gone on to do other things. So he runs his enterprise academies in South Africa and also in the Caribbean, which aim primarily at people who want to make a difference to change the world. And he's also recently published his latest book called Screw Business as Usual, which actually sets out his own perspective on what I'm talking about today, which is that every entrepreneur has a duty to do good, and that it should literally be, that should be the focus of what they're doing, and that the money will actually follow. If they do things the right thing in the right way for their customers, then the money will actually follow. So if Julie presses the button again for me, I actually think that most people are like Jamie and Richard. So they have their vision, drive, commitment, and passion for whatever they do, but they actually want to change the world for the better, or at least they don't want to leave the world any worse than it was when they started. So if Julie presses again, and the key important thing is that they're not off trying to do something that they don't know anything about. So in Jamie's case, everything is about his cooking. And in Richard's case, everything is about being an entrepreneur. They stick to what they know. So it's not about just going out and making a charitable contribution. It's about thinking, what could I do with my business that would allow me to both make a living or make a profit, and also to actually put back something into my community and world. So that's the interesting one. So, Julie can press the button for me again. And we should have a slide headed, we have a high impact already. And if you press the button for me again, we'll have a nice picture of quality. I think the thing about small businesses in general is, regardless of whether you're a social enterprise or see yourself more as a commercial entrepreneur, is that we're already doing a lot of this stuff inherently. We just don't realize that we are. And because we don't realize that we are, we don't see the opportunities to expand upon that slightly. So I would say that the majority of small businesses are highly committed to quality and to their customer base. Often we are very, very integrated into our communities, and our business reputation and personal reputation are very, very closely aligned. And I certainly know that's true with me and most of the people that I know. And if Julie presses it again, there's a buy local sign that comes up. And there is another thing, that one of the things that we tend to do is that we do tend to buy local. So we tend to be people who will actually contribute to our local supply chains and thereby help to regenerate and to keep the economic prosperity in the areas that we live and work in going. And of course, because we employ local people generally, we're helping with that as well. And talking about people, if Julie presses it again, you should have some lovely little characters there. One of the things that small businesses are really, really good at, whether they're commercial or social entrepreneurs, is diversity in their workforce. We tend to give people a chance. We tend to get to know people and offer them the opportunities that perhaps would not be there if we were going through slightly more bureaucratic recruitment processes. It's not unusual, and I can cite a really good example of a small organisation very close to where I live, who went to look for an apprentice, and in the interview process, a learning disabled young man applied for the role. And interestingly, the job centre didn't know he was learning disabled, despite the fact he had an academic age of 9 and had been with us for over 12 months. That organisation liked this individual so much and admired the fact that they wanted this job and were willing to do a great deal to get it, that they ended up taking on 2 apprentices, the one that would have got the job normally and this learning disabled young man. And 4 years later, both of those individuals are still with that organisation, but it's actually, interestingly, the learning disabled young man who is doing better in terms of commitment, loyalty, learning, qualifications, and so on. And I think that's kind of very true of a lot of our types of organisations. And if Julie passes the button again for me, the other thing we're really, really good at is innovation. So we tend to find new and different and interesting ways of doing things, which we can then exploit. And if you press the button again, a big one, we're at the heart of our communities. I think most people find it difficult to separate easily where their business starts and stops in terms of their community. And that's really important. So effectively, whether we're social entrepreneurs or we are actually commercial entrepreneurs, the impact that we have is there. What we need to do is to look at how can we actually expand that impact and then actually use that to help us in terms of generating the income that we need to carry on with the work that we do. So what I'm going to do now is actually show you some real-life examples of what people are actually doing in this respect. The majority of these are small businesses, and hopefully it will spark some thought about the things you're already doing that perhaps you haven't recognized as being about social value, and perhaps also some things that you might adopt. So if Julie can press the button, we should have a slide that says who and what do you have. And if she presses it again, there's a lovely picture of Andy Southern, who actually has a company called Windmill Tapes, and he's out in Stockport. And here's the interesting thing. Andy was very keen on retaining his team. He has a fantastic team, and he also appreciates that in terms of what they do, which is they make tapes and labels, that it's quite difficult to find perhaps all the interest and variety that he'd like to be able to give that team. So he created something called Windmill in the Community. And what he did was that he now encourages his staff to volunteer for charities and community events. And he's found that the benefits that that brings him in terms of the happiness of his workforce and their loyalty and commitment, and also the actual opportunities in the local community and where he's identified new business and new opportunities is phenomenal. And it's not why he did it. He did it literally because it was about staff. He wanted to give his staff something that was meaningful to them. But interestingly, since he started doing this, he's increased his staff from 34 to 50. He's building a new factory and acquired a new business, and he partially attributes that to his windmill in the community initiative. And I think one of the things we forget as well is that volunteering doesn't actually have to be about time to do things like painting community centres and so on. It can actually be a staff development issue as well. So looking at people who perhaps would volunteer to be a trustee or to do a mentoring, for example, for Unlimited, a good plug there, Julie, is really quite important. And that, for example, perhaps somebody in junior in your marketing team could offer some marketing help to a local charity or community group, and that would help to develop them so both organisations actually benefit. So Julie, if you can press the button for me again. This is a local coal centre, and you can see that they're working on the Comic Relief on Red Nose Day. But one of the interesting things is that often community groups and charities find it difficult to make phone calls to ask for donations of things like raffle prizes and so on. But commercial call centres are often very willing to donate some of their staff time to do it for you. And I did that recently for an organisation that is a charity that works with people with acquired brain injuries, and they were looking for donations, sponsorship and raffle prizes for their annual ball. And they were struggling. And I'd asked them why didn't they think of asking one of their supporters who had a call centre if they'd be willing to donate a couple of hours. The guy didn't only donate a couple of hours, he actually offered with a 27 seats that he had in one team, that anybody on that team who wanted to donate an hour of their time could do so in his work time across the following months. And their number of actual donations went up by it was an incredible 78% across that month when those people rang around, because they're professional callers and they know how to handle it. And as the guy said on the call centre, nobody's ever asked. And that's the only reason why he's never done it. He's never thought about it. It's now something that he's regularly doing. So Julie, if you press my button again for me. Project link on the left-hand side. This is fabulous. This is a local landscape gardener, Tony Miller, again, funnily enough in Stockport. Stockport's obviously getting really into this. And his customer base are primarily schools. And as part of what he does, and he had never thought about this, he often with teachers sits down and works out lesson plans so that the children can get involved in the work that he's doing in the school. So, for example, he will do things like get the children to work out how many square tons or whatever it is these days you need of tarmac to lay the path, and then we'll take them outside when the lorry comes so that they can actually see what that amount looks like. And he hadn't realised that what he was doing was actually about adding social value. So when he was bidding for contracts, which he has to do because he works with schools, he wasn't putting this in, and he was struggling to actually to win the marks on those questions. And one of the things that he'd done, without realising it, was he'd set up a website for schools that had resources for them to go to about the environment and about the kind of work that he does. And as soon as he started putting this into his bids, his comments were, "It's bleeding obvious, now you've told me," is that his success rates obviously went up straight away. And he was also shortlisted for a business award based on that work he does. And it's just something he does as part of what he does, and has never identified it as being anything special. And Julie, if you can press the button. Another example would be to think about what you throw away or what you don't use all the time. And if we press it again, here's some interesting figures. There's currently about 400,000 tonnes of wasted food in the UK, and yet there are about 4 million people who are in food poverty. So Julie, if you press it again for me, please. I don't know if any of you have heard of a wonderful organisation called Food Cycle. This is a charity, but what it actually does is that it has projects all over the UK, including one in Manchester, which is not very far from where I am. And what they do is that they connect kitchen space that people aren't using at that time with food that would be otherwise wasted, and combine the two with training for people who perhaps wouldn't necessarily get it otherwise, and create lunches and dinners that then the community comes to. So if you press it again for me, Julie, effectively what they're handling here are issues around high unemployment and unused kitchen space, as well as the wasted food. And if you press it again, there's a nice picture of actually a group of volunteers doing this within a kitchen. Actually, I think that one's over in Hackney. But it's an interesting concept. Lots of organisations have kitchens that they don't use in the evenings or at the weekends. They only use them during the day when their staff are in there. So sometimes it can be as simple as letting somebody else use something that you've got that you're not using all the time. So if you press it again for me, Julie, thinking then about what your customers are using or not using. This is one you've probably all seen. If you press it again for me, Julie, there's a picture of the lovely Joanna Lumley. And this was an initiative by Marks and Spencer's, which is what they call their Plan A, because there is no Plan B. And the thing about this, though, is it's something that would be so easy, and I've seen replicated by smaller organisations now, which is the concept of if your customers have products of yours that they're no longer using, or products of other people, then why not bring them in and do something with them? And the clever thing about the Marks and Spencer's was that they were offering a reward initially to try and change the behaviour and get people used to doing this. But of course, the reward was £5 if you spent £35 or more with them. So they were also encouraging that financial element. But if you press the button again for me, please, Julie, here's one that perhaps I'm certain that Julie will know. This is actually an unlimited award winner, which is Mum's the Word. And this is a fantastic twist on this idea. Because what Mums the Word do is that they collect uniforms, primarily school uniforms, brownies, scouts, things like that, and also now have diversified into other textiles like bedding and coats and so on. And what they do is that they upcycle those and they then sell them on at very, very reasonable prices, much lower than anywhere else, to their community, to people who would need those uniforms but can't afford to pay the full prices. And it's a fabulous, fabulous social enterprise, and the results that they've had are stunning. You know, the amount that they've saved to landfill, for example. They have pop-up shops and a pop-up mobile van now driving around, and they're in shopping malls and so on. And it's such a simple idea, but all they've done are take things that people are no longer using, got them, and given them a new purpose. So again, a really simple idea that you could look at within your own business. What don't you or your customers use that you could actually do something different with? And if we press it again, this is a really interesting one. This is actually a company called ITC, and they're a very luxury travel company, and they're based in Chester. And what they did, which is fascinating, is that they wanted to encourage something that they call voluntourism. So this is where people who would like to volunteer for working with a charitable project while they're on holiday can add this into their holiday package. But they do a very careful evaluation and matching process of those individuals, and also a very careful working with the charities abroad to make sure that that volunteering, which is in small chunks usually of 3 days, is actually meaningful to them. So they're helping to manage that input to the charity and also doing the matching process back in the UK. But here's the interesting thing. These people who tend to travel with ITC are high net worth individuals, and they pay a premium price to do the voluntourism. And when I looked at it, it was often half the cost again of their holiday to add those extra 3 days on when they'll be living still in the hotel that they're in, but volunteering in here. So it's a wonderful example, and of course the profits from that are then ploughed back into the charities that they're actually supporting in a number of different countries. So it's a fantastic where a travel company has used what their expertise is, recognized the need, filled that need, and been able to generate an income not only for themselves but also for the charities through that. So if you press it again for me, Julie, I should have one that says, can you do things differently? And if you press it again for me, this is actually a garage. And funnily enough, this one's in the United States. If some of you are looking for a business opportunity, this might be the one for you. This is called Get More Stylish. And this is a garage where they've actually set it up on the whole premise of green. They work with cars to help them to run cleaner, greener, and cheaper while fixing the bad automotive service experience that they feel that there is out there. So effectively, they've created like the Apple Store, but for a garage. And if you press it again for me, Julie, I love this. car hugging in progress. And their slogan is drive good baby, get more mileage. And so what they're actually doing is they're tuning cars to use less fuel, to be more efficient, to use less oil and so on. And while they're actually car hugging your car, there's a retail area where you can sit down, you can buy merchandise, you can have a coffee, you can look at what they do. It's all explained to you how they actually help the environment. And it's become a real cult. And what's really interesting to me is that this is in the heart of car land out in America, where they're actually not renowned for their economy of fuel, for example, and trying to save the environment. But it's doing really, really, really well. And I rather like that. I think drive good baby and get more mileage. I'd love my car to be hugged. It's hugged by me, but perhaps not by my garage. And if you press it again for me, Julie. So here would be the question. If those are just some examples and some of the reasons why you might be wanting to think about doing good, is how can it be good for your business? So these are some questions that I'd leave you with. The first one would be, what inspired you about today? Leaving aside our technical hitch. If you press that button for me, Julie, you should have a lovely picture of a heart there. And if you press it again for me, what could my business do? And this is a lovely picture of my grandson. He's now 4, but this was when he was 3, and he first encountered snow. And what this picture always says to me is even if something is cold, wet, and really, really unfamiliar, it can actually be truly exciting. And I think that's very true in business as well, is what could you do that's aligned to what you already do that would actually have a bigger social impact, help to retain your staff and make them feel more part of the community, and help you as a business to generate more business, whether you're a social business or you're a commercial business. And finally, if you can press the last one for me, Julie, please, is how can you make this happen? So those would be the 3 challenges I would leave for you. And it would be no surprise to you to know that I do truly believe that doing good is good for business, and I could give you lots and lots of examples, but Julie isn't going to really allow me very much more time. So I'm going to stop there, Julie, if that's okay.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who has persevered with us for this webinar. It's not been an ideal situation with the technical hitches, and I realised that the slides were out of sync. We lost the screen temporarily, and a number of things have gone on. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening in. And thank you, Melanie, for a fantastic webinar. It was really interesting, really inspiring. I just want to give the opportunity for anybody in the audience, if they'd like to ask any questions, if they want to spend a couple of minutes typing those in, and we can try and have a Q&A for the next few minutes whilst we've got Melanie here. So if you want to just type those in, we'll see if we can answer those. This webinar will be recorded. We might actually do a rerun of this recording, so it's actually in line. The slides are in line with the voiceover, but we'll keep everybody informed about that. And we also have a number of webinars coming up, and the next one is with Isla Wilson on engaging with corporates. I will just check the date for that one. It is on Wednesday the 9th of April. So again, that will be at 12 o'clock. Hopefully we will have resolved all of our technical hitches by then, and we'll be able to run smoothly. So I'm just going to see if anybody has typed in any questions, to see any comments or thoughts. So people are very much appreciative that we got this back on track, and that we did it very well as a double act, considering we're in completely different locations. But if we could perhaps re-record it at some point so the slides are in sync, that might be very helpful for people. Okay, you've got a really good question here, actually. So somebody's asked, as a social entrepreneur, I'm finding it emotionally very hard. We are filling a social gap through a business model, but it's slow. How do you keep going? So any words of advice there, Melanie?
I always say, I've been there, I do that on a day-to-day basis. I know exactly how you feel, and Julie knows I do, because often one of the people I call for my support is Julie. I think, firstly, it's about passion and purpose. So if you're truly passionate about what you do, and you truly, truly believe in your purpose, then it becomes a lot easier to maintain the momentum. You know, if we were here and we were only in it for the money, then it gets very, very difficult. So that's one advantage that I do think that anyone who has passion and purpose has, regardless of whether they're a commercial or a social entrepreneur. I think also is it is going back and looking at that business model and thinking about whether there are perhaps some quick wins that would actually help you to gain a bit of momentum. So things you could do now that would help you to gain that momentum moving forward. And also very much for me, and I mentioned it just a few minutes ago, is drawing on my networks. Because often if I get a little bit stuck or I get a little bit down or I start to question myself or it all seems to be going too slowly, if I pull on my networks and I'm open and I'm honest and I explain where I'm at, they will often have some fantastic ideas to get me restarted again, and often also some fantastic ideas to get some of that acceleration going, whether it's introducing me to a new person or whether it's looking at something from a different angle. And I have to say, sort of personally, that happened to me last night. I was talking to one of my volunteers because I've hit a bit of a blank wall about something, and just having that different perspective, in 10 minutes, he was able to suggest something that, whilst it's not exactly what I'll go with, sparked another thought in me that's actually allowed me to overcome that hurdle and move on. So I hope that that kind of helps.
Yeah, no, that was really useful, Melanie, thank you. I would certainly know from my experience of working with social entrepreneurs is that you often feel isolated, you're on your own, and it's very difficult to be motivated. So certainly that kind of drawing on networks thing certainly resonates with me, and Unlimited are really trying to connect people and bring people together. So whether you're actually an Unlimited award winner or not, we do have a lot of events that are open up to people starting out, people who are not really sure where they're going. We also have a very strong online community through the Unlimited Facebook and LinkedIn groups. So just sometimes it's nice to feel that other people are in the same situation that you're in, and that can offer support. So please connect with Unlimited if you're not already connected with us. Another question that came through is, should an SME employ people on the basis of their willingness to contribute to social good, or should the company create that culture from within?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to say congratulations. That's the first time I've been asked that one. I think it depends a little bit on what your purpose is and what you do, and I would say it was a bit of both. There's an element of people. We tend to employ people who are like us, and that's not always a good thing. It's a good thing in some ways because employing based on culture and attitude is proven to be the way to actually drive your business forward, because most skills and experience can be taught, and of course that's a little bit glib, and obviously you need particular skills and experience at different times. But in general, if people have got the right culture and the right attitude, that actually the rest of it kind of follows. It's about getting the good people in your business and then figuring out how to take your business forward. But I do think, on the other hand, that even with an existing business, the role models within that business, and they'll come at every level. It's not always, obviously there'll be some very, very well-known higher-up leaders, but depending on the size of your organization, it can also be people at different levels. There are leaders at every level, people that people look to. And if those people are instinctively doing the right thing at all times, then the rest follows too. And as an observation, one of the things that stops people from doing the right thing all the time is often not intentional. Sometimes it's about processes. And I had an example of that this week with a bank who couldn't do something that I needed them to do. And yet at the same time, the guy was clearly frustrated because he knew that it was something that he should do for me, and he knew that it was something that should be easy for him to do for me. And instead, we went through this convoluted conversation and had to do something completely different. And staff get very, very frustrated when they're not able to do the right thing. So looking at processes and systems and devolved powers, that's, who has authority to do what, is really helpful. So I would say both. If you're an organisation that wants to do social good, employing people who don't is probably not going to help you get there. But on the other hand, you can still turn around with the organisation that you've got. So I hope that helps.
That was really useful, Melanie. Thank you. Another question is asked, if there is an online network connecting UK businesses making the difference to their community. I've just mentioned, obviously, the Unlimited network, which is both online and offline. Melanie, I don't know if you're aware of any other online networks which might be useful for people to connect with?
There are a few. I'd probably have to email them over to you, Julie. I mean, there's different things for different people. I mean, I absolutely agree. You know that I'm a raving fan of Unlimited. I am an unabashed raving fan of Unlimited. And I'm not an award winner. I just think that the whole ethos of what Unlimited does and the way in which it connects people is so hugely valuable. There are organisations, for example, that have been exploring things like having businesses that trade with each other for social good. And I've had to look them up for you, Julie, and send them over, if that's okay.
That would be perfect. Yeah, so I'll be able to share the slides today and any other interesting and useful information for you. Another question that's come through is the government doing more to recognise social businesses? There seems to be a lot of commercial businesses who don't understand what a social enterprise is all about. They get us mixed up with being a charity. So where do you think the government is at the moment, Melanie, in the whole social...
Because I can't speak on behalf of the British government.
Absolutely. Well, you are friends with David Cameron. So.
I just want to extend that to people to say that I won a big society award, which is what Julie's alluding to, so I actually went to Downing Street. That's what she means, not a personal offence. Just to clarify that before people think. I think the answer is yes. There's a lot of change going on at the moment, and there's a lot of recognition, not only by the government, but actually, interestingly, by all parties, which is where it gets quite exciting, about the fact that there is this different way, there's a third way. And I think what's interesting are some of the things that we've seen coming in at the moment. You're right, I absolutely agree, there's an awful lot of confusion about what is a social enterprise, but I also think there's a lot of confusion about what a social enterprise is within the third sector as well, and is a company limited by shares that clearly has a social purpose and trades for that social purpose a social enterprise or not. You know, there's a lot of discussion about things like that. What's interesting for me was in the budget, if anyone wants to go and look it up, that there's now tax relief on social investments. So that's investment to social enterprises as defined by the government in that particular piece of tax relief, which is community interest companies and co-ops and charities and the trade. And I think that's really interesting because that's a move towards saying we're recognising this as being a different type of institution that should then receive tax relief on investment. So I think that's quite interesting. I think the other thing that's interesting in itself is the Social Value Act, because that was brought in to encourage commissioners to think about how could we generate more social value through the contracts that we actually put out to tender, and not only the contracts themselves, but the tendering process as well. So I think that's interesting. And certainly I've had the privilege of presenting at a couple of forums recently, and the word around the table was very much, we want to support and encourage social enterprises, but I think we on the other side have got quite a lot of work to do to get all three parties to think, well, not in three, all of the rest of them as well, but to think about what would that mean in practice and to think through some of the issues, because one of my concerns is that they'll start to almost over-regulate what a social enterprise is to make it fit into a pocket so that it's easy for them to say, that's a social enterprise, and so we can offer that this, and that will take away some choice from social enterprises about how they want to be structured and constituted, and also potentially the opportunity for different types of investment further down the line, because, you know, it's horses for courses. And some social enterprises scaling up, for example, are very much looking at different types of investment funding that wouldn't necessarily be available to them if they went down some of the constitutional routes that are being suggested. So I think really, really exciting stuff on the horizon, and we need to help them all to push it along.
Yeah, no, I think that's really useful, Melanie. From Unlimited's perspective, we have a very strong policy team who are in talks with all the different parties, and we know that it is high on their agenda, but there is a lot of work to do from the sector as well. So, you know, Unlimited are involved in that work. We've come a long way, but we've still got a long way to go. Last question here. We're a limited company by shares to get shareholder investment initially. CIC wouldn't have been a good model for us. I think that's actually just some information that somebody's sharing. I mean, obviously there are different structures that you can take, and we will, and we have previously, and we will again be running webinars on the different company structures. It is a bit of a minefield out there, and ultimately it is down to the decision of which direction you want your venture to run in.
I completely agree, and I think also what I would add to that is, based on the last question too, is that's very much my concern. I agree that, you know, the community interest company model, for example, is an excellent model for some organisations, and it's completely wrong for others. And, you know, part of the thing I'd love to see is some recognition that actually sometimes going down the share route is a good way to do it, and also that perhaps, you know, social entrepreneurs should not be penalised in terms of tax. You know, so for example, at the moment with the limited by shares, you could pay a proportion of your directors' dividends to help with some of that tax issues, which you can't do if you're currently limited by guarantee, for example. So at the moment, I think there's some interesting areas to explore and think through. How would that work?
Absolutely. Okay. As soon as we've come to the end of our questions, if anybody else has any further questions, then don't hesitate to drop me an email, and I can liaise with Melanie to get a response to you. Once again, thank you so much to everybody for bearing with us today. And the rest of the 2014 webinar series is hopefully going to run a lot smoother. Like I said, we will be able to share the slides, and we will look at doing a re-recording so that the words are in sync with the slides. But I hope for the people that have joined us, this has been useful. I think it's been fantastic. It's great to do a webinar with Melanie, and you're very passionate and inspirational, so I've also learnt a lot today, which has been fantastic. So thank you, huge thank you to Melanie, huge thank you to everybody for listening. Like I said, the next webinar is next Wednesday, the 9th of April, on how to engage with corporates with the also very lovely Isla Wilson. So hopefully
I highly
that will
recommend
be
that
fun.
one.
Great. So thank you to everybody, and hope you're able to join us for the rest of the webinar series. And yeah, we'll keep in touch. So thank you very much, and hope everybody has a good rest of the day. I'll switch this off now and see you all soon. Thank you. Bye.